What's up, fam? Welcome back. Merry Christmas. It is the time of Yule. And I myself just got my Christmas tree last night and wrestled that thing into the house and got it set up. I'm just letting the limbs settle today, and then when it seems to have taken on its shape, then I'll start putting the ornaments on. So, I like trimming the Christmas tree. I'm looking forward to that. I'm kind of a sucker for all things holidays. And not just Christmas, but if you watch my channel, you know that I'm just into holidays, period, all through the year. Even the obscure ones that most people don't celebrate anymore. And if you're looking for a Christmas present, a good idea would be to get somebody the deluxe vinyl edition of Beekeeper Spaceman. This is the self-titled debut album of the indie rock duo that I'm a part of. Spencer Kinney and I are Beekeeper Spaceman, and we named our debut record Beekeeper Spaceman. It's really a great package. I highly recommend this, not just because I'm biased, because it's me, but the artist, Kyla Rose Parrish, did such a great job with the material. So the vinyl record itself is beautiful, and there's a deluxe lyrics booklet that Kyla helped me produce, and she made a unique collage for every single song. I'm biased, but it's the nicest lyrics booklet I've ever seen. And so if you're looking for something to get somebody for Christmas, that's a great idea. And if you've been watching the videos and checking out the songs on this channel, then you know what I'm talking about. And it's 10 songs, debut album, Beekeeper Spaceman. So check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes to where to buy the vinyl. Yeah, so what else has been going on? Well, last night I watched a little boxing. I don't know if y'all like boxing. I do like combat sports, and this surprises a lot of my friends because, I'm a musician, poet, and just not necessarily the kind of person you would expect to be into boxing, but I guess. I don't really think of those as being oppositional, but a lot of people do. They're always like, you enjoy boxing and MMA? I was like, yeah, I do. I don't myself box or practice MMA, but I like watching it, and I do follow both sports, especially boxing. And recently in MMA, a great fighter from Australia named Alexander Volkanovski fought on short notice at a weight that is higher than his natural weight and the weight he's normally fought at. A guy named Islam Makhachev, who's maybe the best in the world. Those are maybe like 1 and 2 or 1 and 1A or something in the world, these two fighters. And Volkanovski got a call just days before the event because the person that Makhachev was supposed to fight had to bow out for medical reasons, or I think he got cut in sparring, something like that. And Volk stepped up and took the fight, and it didn't go well for him at all. He got knocked out early in the fight. It was ugly, and it was really hard to watch, especially for a fan of Volkanovski, which I am. And what was even maybe harder to watch than the knockout was the post-fight presser, because Volkanovski broke down, started crying. Not just because he had lost. That wasn't even what he was talking about so much. He was talking about where he was mentally and emotionally when he got that call from the UFC. Hey, do you want to step up and take this fight on short notice? And it turns out that Volkanovski was going through a kind of dark night of the soul. He was having mental and emotional struggles. And he used an expression I wasn't familiar with. He said, I was doing my head in, just kind of spiraling and getting lost in his feelings and thoughts. And he said, I don't even know what it is. I've got a great family, a great life. What am I, what is it that's got me down? I don't know. It's hard to explain. He's talking about these kinds of mental and emotional difficulties, crises that folks experience. And it was sad, y'all, because he was basically begging the UFC in this press conference to keep him busy. And he knew that many people were going to say he needs a break because it was a bad knockout. And a lot of commentators were saying, no, he does not need to jump back in the octagon. he needs to take some time off. And then when he does come back, he needs to have some fights that aren't like at top level because he needs to get his confidence back. But right now, he just needs a break. That's what folks were saying. But for him, this was an existential crisis, and he's saying, please keep me busy. Just please keep me busy. Because he's worried about what will happen if he stops and goes back into that dark place where he was before the fight. He is more fearful of that dark place than of Islam Makhachev or any other fighter. He's not scared of fighters. He's scared of his own soul. And I think many of us can relate to this. We've experienced something of this, maybe not to the degree that he had, or maybe worse, but we have some inkling, I think, of what he's talking about. And he was very open and vulnerable in that press conference. And then I would compare that to somebody like Tyson Fury. He's a hero to many because of the fact that he came back from these kind of dark nights of the soul that he's been through. And it's been admirable how Fury has talked about this. And he is a heroic figure in this way. But when you see Fury usually at press conferences before a fight, after a fight, sometimes he's chill and just talking reasonable, almost like an analyst. But a lot of times his way of dealing with all the anxiety that he's carrying is to project a kind of unstoppable sanguinity, a kind of cheerfulness, and it also spills over into trash talk. But a lot of times it's this almost like, this is something that's not commented on very often. People talk about the trash talk. Fury, the great trash talker. Or they'll say he's losing a step as a trash talker. I've heard some of that recently. But what you don't hear people talking about is this kind of little boy-like cheerfulness that he projects. And it seems both authentic and inauthentic. I mean, I think there is something natural to him about that, but also I think I can almost see him sometimes when he's in an interview, doing an interview. I sense in his eyes, in his countenance, that he's using this little boy cheerfulness to fend off the thoughts that he knows will take him to a dark place. You can see him kind of, that way madness lies. Like just not, he almost like he's refused. You get the sense sometimes that there's a menacing figure right over here, not another boxer, but like Tyson's own thoughts. There's this menacing figure right over here, and Fury's kind of like keeping his eyes right over here. He won't look that way. There's a feeling of that in these interviews. And so there's this cheerfulness that's a way of dealing with the dark feelings. And then there's the open, vulnerable introspection that you get in a press conference like the one with Volkanovski. And this contrast got me thinking about some songs that I've been studying lately. As a songwriter, I love studying other songwriters, their work, how they achieve the extraordinary effects they do in their songs. And I've been thinking about this Merle Haggard song called Workingman Blues. This is a song that my daddy used to play for me when I was growing up. My dad plays guitar and sings, and he would always have a box guitar on his lap around the house, and he'd strike up a old country song, and this Workingman Blues was one that he liked to play. And I'm not going to play it right now on this episode because I don't want to get into copyright trouble, but if you don't know the song, go listen to it. Merle Haggard, Workingman Blues. And in this song, we get this kind of cheerful spirit. There's an atmosphere in the song. It's very upbeat, cheerful almost, or kind of a let's rally and keep our spirits up and get down to work because we don't have any choice kind of feeling. So the first verse goes, "It's a big job just getting by with 9 kids and a wife. But I've been a working man dang near all my life, and I'll keep on working as long as my two hands are fit to use. And there's a refrain in the song that will go something like, I'll drink a little beer in the tavern, cry a little bit of these working man blues. And so another part says, I'll keep my nose on the grindstone, work hard every day. I might get a little tired on the weekend after I draw my pay, but I'll go back to working. Come Monday morning, I'm right back with the crew. And there's a feeling in the song that maybe this life of constant hard work is part of what's causing the sadness or anxiety or disappointment or whatever these negative feelings are that form this kind of dark undercurrent in the song. But there's also a feeling that the work can be salvific, or at least a kind of stay against madness, because if we can just keep busy, like Volkanovski was saying, just keep busy, maybe we can keep from just sinking into the darkness. And there's this one verse where Merle Haggard sings, sometimes I think about leaving, do a little bumming around. I want to throw my bills out the window, catch a train to another town, but I'll go back working. I got to buy my kids a brand new pair of shoes. Note that mention of shoes. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. So, yeah, that's the Merle Haggard version. And if you listen to it, you'll hear what I'm talking about. It's kind of an upbeat song, and it makes me think a little bit. It's not exactly the same thing, but it kind of puts me in mind of the Tyson Fury method of like, okay, let's just, let's not get too deep into thinking about quitting and, how unsatisfactory my life is in certain respects. Let's just kind of keep working. Back in the gym, back with the crew on Monday morning, that kind of thing. All right, so in the mid to late aughts, maybe 2005 or 6, something like that, Bob Dylan came out with a song called Working Man's Blues No. 2. And this song is obviously in conversation with the Merle Haggard song, which is why he calls it No. 2. And in a way, the song seems to answer a question that I had asked myself, having known the Merle Haggard song all my life. What if this working man stopped working and slowed down and really started thinking about where he is in his life? What would happen then? What would happen to him emotionally? This song answers that question, I think, because it's a slower song. It's somber. It's contemplative. It's more Volkanovski press conference of like, I'm actually going to open up about what I'm going through, and I'm going to slow down and take time and feel everything there is to feel here, which may or may not be a good idea. I mean, there's a kind of wisdom, maybe, although this runs counter to a lot of contemporary thinking on this. Not all of it, but it does run counter to certain maybe cliches of contemporary thinking, that it's always a good thing to think more and more and more about your predicament and how you feel and all that. And there is something to be said for working through your feelings, but there's also something sometimes to be said for like getting on with it. And so I'm not saying that one of these modes is wiser than the other, but I'm saying that they're different. And in the Bob Dylan song, you get the idea of there's a picture here of a hard-working man who is introspective and thinking through what he's going through and what he's feeling. And it's a wonderful song. It's written with a great deal of prosodic discipline, actually. I recommend that you listen to it and pay attention to the writerly craft evinced in the song. I mean, the rhyme scheme is quite demanding, actually, in this piece, and there are many wonderful lines in it. But one that I wanted to talk about is Well, before I talk about it, let me step away momentarily from this song and set this up by telling you about a third song. Because there are actually, so Dylan he's definitely responding to the Merle Haggard song, and he's in conversation with it. But there's another song kind of in the shadows of the Bob Dylan song. And it's a song by Robert Johnson, a blues song. It's a song called They're Red Hot. And it starts out, this song is about a woman who's a hot tamale vendor in the Delta. And I'm from the Delta. In fact, I grew up not far from a town called, not that far, maybe like, there's one county between my home county and the county in which the city of Helena is located. So there's my county, then there's Monroe County, and then there's Phillips County, which is where Helena is located. And Helena has a famous blues festival. And Helena is one of the places where Robert Johnson lived, Helena, Arkansas. And so he's really writing about a world that I know very well, having grown up there. And I know about these hot tamales that the song is talking about. Hot tamales are very popular in the Delta. A lot of people don't know this. They're not quite the same as the hot tamales you see like in Mexican restaurants. The Delta ones are different. If you're ever in Lake Village, Arkansas, go to Rhoda's famous hot tamales. I think it's still open. That's a great place to get some good Delta-style hot tamales. So this is what Robert Johnson's talking about, and he says, hot tamales in the red hot, yes, she got them for sale. And this is obviously about like how hot this woman is. So it's a metaphor for like she's sexy. And so hot tamales in the red hot is partly about, the woman and how hot she is. So there's Robert Johnson uses a lot of sexual puns, and he's very clever with them. You see it across his discography. So he says, I got a girl, say she long and tall, sleeps in the kitchen with her feet's in the hall. Hot tamales in the red hot, yes, she got them for sale. And this trope, I got a woman, she's long and tall, sleeps in the kitchen with her feet in the hall, that shows up in a number of songs, not just blues songs. It's a known trope in the Delta region and across the American South. And so I wanted to understand this line as deeply as I could before doing this episode. So I talked to a friend of mine, Daryl Dixon Carr. He's a literary scholar, an African-Americanist. And I asked him what he thinks about it. And he said, well, he thinks that the primary reading, he agreed with me that clearly the primary reading of this has to do with sex. So saying I got a woman, she's long and tall, sleeps in the kitchen with her feet in the hall, that is a way of talking about like how much woman she is and how much woman this singer has in his life. More woman equals more sex. Like there's like sex fills the house is kind of the idea. And I think that is the primary reading of this. But I asked Daryl, I said, do you think there could be some social commentary going on as well, or would that be a reach? And he said, I threw out a few possibilities, and we got to thinking about it together. And he said, well, actually, we had a scholar in our program in recent years named Summer Hamilton. And I know Summer. She and I are both from the Arkansas Delta, from the Arkansas side of the Mississippi River Delta, the alluvial plain that they call the Delta. And so she and I grew up very close to each other. And Summer, in her scholarship, has written about African-American housing, like what kinds of housing were available to black folks at different times in Southern history. And Daryl, he said that in light of the questions I'm asking, he starts thinking about Summer's research, and he remembers that one thing Summer wrote about is that very often black folks would live in very small homes so that a single room would sort of have to be a number of rooms in one. It would perform a number of functions. So that For example, the kitchen might also be the kid's bedroom or something, or the parent's bedroom. People may be sleeping in there. And I got to thinking about folklore that I've collected in the Delta. And indeed, in a number of stories that I myself have collected, I've seen this kind of thing happening. Especially when you get stories about ghosts, like when you're collecting ghost lore, you learn about people's homes because they're often telling you about exactly where things happened in the home when they saw these ghosts. And so very often, and this would often be black folks, they would say, I was sleeping on my corn crib in the kitchen, and that's when such and such happened. And they'll point out sleeping on a corn crib in the kitchen. So Daryl said there may be some secondary meaning behind the Robert Johnson lyric that has to do with how small the house is. And actually, this reading would not be mutually exclusive with the other one, because if you've got a woman who's long and tall, there's so much woman, there's just so much of her, and there's so much sex to be had, and the house is small, the feeling that her beauty and her sexuality are filling the house would be all the more vivid. And so these two things may be working hand in hand. And so the line, she sleeps in the kitchen, might have to do with just space limitations, that the kitchen has to be a bedroom, has to serve as a bedroom. So there's that possibility. All right, now back to the Bob Dylan song. In the Bob Dylan song, in the fourth verse, he says, "Now the place is ringed with countless foes. Some of them may be deaf and dumb. No man, no woman knows the hour that sorrow will come." Or maybe he means the hour that sorrow, like that particular sorrow, will come. "In the dark I hear the night birds call. I can hear a lover's breath. I sleep in the kitchen with my feet in the hall. Sleep is like a temporary death." And the chorus goes, "Meet me at the bottom, don't lag behind. Bring me my boots and shoes." Remember the shoe reference in the Merle Haggard version. "Meet me at the bottom, don't lag behind. Bring me my boots and shoes. You can hang back or fight your best on the front line. Sing a little bit of these working man blues." And actually, Dylan is alluding in a number of ways to the Merle Haggard version very cleverly and poignantly. In the Merle Haggard version, after the turnaround between verses, there's this really cool guitar work that involves a seventh chord, this kind of jangly seventh chord. And even though this Bob Dylan version is much more kind of, it's slower, it's more melodic, it's, as I said, it's more contemplative. It doesn't have the sound of that kind of jangly upbeat original. He does go out of his way to hit that seventh in between a chorus and the next verse in the Bob Dylan version, as if to kind of just tip his cap to or just kind of pay homage to the Merle Haggard original. And this idea of "bring me my boots and shoes" makes me think of the shoes, as I said, that are mentioned in the original Merle Haggard version. But now it's not the kid's shoes, it's the worker's shoes, the boots and shoes that he works in and maybe has to fight in. And there's a sense here that maybe there's going to be a big confrontation. There's a kind of an undercurrent in the Dylan song that raises the possibility of revolution, that the workers will rise up. There's something like that kind of hinted at, I think, in the song. Notice that line, "I sleep in the kitchen with my feet in the hall," is clearly a reference to this trope, this blues and country trope. I got a woman, she's long and tall, sleeps in the kitchen with her feet in the hall. Except here, he's a working man coming in from a day's work, absolutely just shot. And my sense is, I sleep in the kitchen with my feet in the hall. Not, I got a woman, she's long and tall, sleeps in the kitchen with her feet in the hall. I sleep in the kitchen with my feet in the hall. I think that's about exhaustion. Just collapsing in the floor, Didn't even make it to the bed. I sleep in the kitchen with my feet in the hall. And it could be, another possibility, about the kind of poverty that Daryl was talking about and that Summer Hamilton wrote about in her dissertation, that maybe he's so poor that there is no bedroom. So it could be about exhaustion. Actually, in the song, he mentions, I can live on rice and beans. So there's this mention of just getting by on very simple foods. Maybe he was going to the kitchen thinking he was going to make himself some supper, but he just collapsed with his feet in the hall, never made it to bed. There's that possibility. Or it could be about poverty and not even having a bedroom. But in any case, I think it's a brilliant twist on the old trope. I love what Dylan does there, and the way he's putting his song in conversation with these traditional materials that he loved so much. Like, he loved old country music and blues, American roots musics. And so the whole song is a kind of loving response to the Merle Haggard, but then within that, he's also responding to Robert Johnson and others who've used the "I got a woman, she's long and tall" trope. But he's honoring it in a way more, I think, meaningfully by offering up a twist on it. In other words, he doesn't just take the trope and drop it in his song. He says, to honor this trope, I want to deal with it very imaginatively, which he does. It's a beautiful use of allusion, I think, in the song, and it made me think about how, well, the part about "Bring Me My Boots and Shoes" made me think of something I read in this book by Martin Heidegger, the philosopher, Poetry, Language, Thought. And I'll just close by reading a passage of this for you. In this excerpt, Heidegger is talking about the paintings by Van Gogh of peasants' shoes. I have a Dutch friend who's told me I should pronounce it Van Gogh, but I'm not going to do that because I'll feel pretentious, so I'm just going to say Van Gogh. All right. Heidegger's thinking about Van Gogh's paintings of peasant shoes. If you're not familiar with those paintings, just Google Van Gogh peasant shoes and you'll see some of those paintings. But Heidegger says, from Van Gogh's painting, we cannot even tell where these shoes stand. There is nothing surrounding this pair of peasant shoes in or to which they might belong. Only an undefined space. There are not even clods of soil from the field or the field path sticking to them, which would at least hint at their use. A pair of peasant shoes and nothing more. And yet, from the dark opening of the worn insides of the shoes, the toilsome tread of the worker stares forth. In the stiffly rugged heaviness of the shoes, there is the accumulated tenacity of her. He's imagining a woman peasant. The tenacity of her slow trudge through the far-spreading and ever-uniform furrows of the field swept by a raw wind. On the leather lie the dampness and richness of the soul. Under the soles slides the loneliness of the field path as evening falls. In the shoes vibrates the silent call of the earth, its quiet gift of the ripening grain, and its unexplained self-refusal in the fallow desolation of the wintry field. This equipment is pervaded by uncomplaining anxiety as to the certainty of bread, the wordless joy of having once more withstood want, the trembling before the impending childbed and shivering at the surrounding menace of death. This equipment belongs to the earth, and it is protected in the world of the peasant woman. From out of this protected belonging, the equipment itself rises to its resting within itself. But perhaps it is only in the picture that we notice all this about the shoes. The peasant woman, on the other hand, simply wears them. If only this simple wearing were so simple. When she takes off her shoes late in the evening, in deep but healthy fatigue, and reaches out for them again in the still, dim dawn, or passes them by on the day of rest, she knows all this without noticing or reflecting. All right. Thank y'all. See you next time.